King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts.
So it's going to be a pretty good weekend for yours truly, King of Podcasts, because this weekend I can finally go back to the movies. I can go back now, get my hands on some hot butter popcorn, get my nice large Diet Coke, sit down on those familiar Regal seats, the leather seats, put everything proper down. Maybe I'll even get a little bit of candy this time around and get to it. Time to go and get started on some good stuff, namely some movies. Tenet this weekend, I'm going to go ahead and look forward to. And I got football coming up this weekend as well. So all that right there is great. I'm looking forward to it all. So here we go. Time to go and get moving on to this edition of the Broadcasters Podcast. Thank you for finding it right here at broadcasterspodcast.com. Here's what we got. We're going to talk about the new Oscars inclusion rules and what that entails, because there's a lot of stories we've been talking about that. We're going to do a radio roundup where we're going to talk about the latest on Howard Stern's contract and where SiriusXM goes if Howard stays on or not. Lee Abrams, who we've talked about several times on this show, talking about terrestrial radio. It's now on the clock. And iHeartMedia CEO Bob Pittman, it's one of my favorites to go ahead and poke at. He talks about being bullish on podcast industry growth. We're going to talk all about that tonight. But my first feature story, even though I'm in a good mood with everything else that's going on, looking forward to a good weekend. The one story that just shook me today, and, I don't want to act like some, Karen or anything like that, where I just need to be upset because I'm not a parent. What I'm going to talk about is the controversial French film Cuties, which was released on Netflix. And there's been a number of clips that have been going around on Twitter as I record today. And, look, I understand that European films, there's a different feeling and a different feel of the lifestyle there, where nudity and sexuality are much more brought in at an earlier age in a number of countries over there. It's just a different feel. So to bring this type of movie into the American movie landscape through Netflix, let me tell you like this. If the movie was put into a regular movie theater, if the movie Cuties was exhibited to movie theaters, if I saw this at my Regal, if I saw this at my AMC local theater, and this was showing, and God forbid for the movie exhibitors that do show this, and it was shown, it was Sundance Film Festival awarded it. So the thing is, you got to question the people that would decide to go ahead and physically go see the movie. You'd have to question yourselves. And Netflix tries to go ahead and explain with some kind of valid reason why this movie was allowed to be put on here. But I'm going to take this point. There are some European films. Again, this is a foreign film that's brought over. This is not a movie that needs to be in the United States. It's a foreign film, much like I'm sure there's other films like this that go on overseas that probably have the same kind of a feel of content that's very sexual and whatnot. But again, in this society, and I don't care about, if it's a religious thing or not. It's just a moral thing. This is just not acceptable here. There's just no way to accept this here at all. It's sexualization of young girls. That, if you want to do it in another country, and that's, how kids are brought up, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about here. It just doesn't, in any way for me, it just doesn't feel right at all. I just don't understand where Netflix comes with the decision. And I don't want to take it from the perspective of what everybody else is talking about, how they feel about what's going on here. What I'm more concerned about is how, when we have so much other content that can be done, and even the way that they try to use this story, there's other stories you could tell that don't need to go to this route. Okay, if you want to go this route, then it should be adults. Here's the question. Now, we're going to use children in this, but the truth is, how many times have we seen a story that was adapted in a particular way, and it just got readapted with different characters, different, people, all that kind of stuff, right? My question is, if you're going to do something like this, then why don't you just all of a sudden make the troop older? Just rework the story for screenplay. Work it so it can be done in an acceptable manner. Like, I'm not accepting, we don't need to be, sanctimonious here. But again, there is some point where if you're a creator, this is where you say, you know what? We don't want to take the story as is like this. We're going to construe it because it needs to fit a moral fabric. Like, the full moral fabric, because obviously porn's out there, but at least pornography is amongst adults and it's highly regulated. This movie needs to be the same way. Like, I don't care if there's that the children in the dance troupe might be wearing outfits, but again, even at that age, like, we have the question about seeing certain, child actresses or child stars that are going out there and wearing clothes that are very sexual. Like, we see, some of the types we see from Disney Channel or Nickelodeon or what have you, and just seeing them growing up, and then the sexualization. Again, that comes at a later age, not at the time that we see them in the light. Okay, the fact to see where Miley Cyrus might have come from, or Selena Gomez might have come from, it's a different story. This right here, it's exploitation. And to have this on, I don't care how good the acting is. This is just not a good plot. There have to be better things that Netflix could be putting on. Anything else. Because where is the attention? Where's the appeal? I got not the appeal, but who came out all of a sudden saying we need to do this? Like, ask yourself the question. Where was there a point that we wanted to go ahead and see who was asking for this kind of movie? Now, if you're a member of NAMBLA, absolutely. If you're somebody that's even associated that way, or you're a sex predator that likes to enjoy the company of children, and you might have some child porn in your house or in your computer, your laptop, then you might be the ones that will go watch Cuties. But what Netflix has done, because this is an exhibition, it's not a movie that got put on in theaters, where if you tried to go to this movie, first of all, you would have protests everywhere for this movie. Then you would also have an outcry for anybody to go see this movie. There's already enough tension out there anyway to put this kind of movie out there. But then again, what happens is we get this put online. And the biggest problem is that it's not just that the movie got out here for American people to watch, because this could have been put out any other time, okay? It could have been put out any other time, anywhere else. You could have, somehow, some way, the movie could have been found this way for a lot of different people to watch. But man, you're putting this on a mass platform like Netflix. To any content creators out there, this is where you need to have a little bit of creative license, where you decide to go ahead and put a movie together, and there's just certain things you just probably would not want to do. Obviously, you don't want to try to, like, sometimes you might see movies that might include some kind of rape or sexual fantasy. Those things might happen. Remember, we talked to Michelle Meek very early on in this program about the sexualization of movies. And I think it's interesting to go and bring that up here, because honestly, that story was really great. Michelle Meek, go look back for that episode, because really great conversation with her, two-parter. We talked about this kind of thing. Not so much about children, but about women and the sexualization of them. This movie is not any way empowering for women. It's not empowering for children. It's just not. There's other stories we could talk about, plights of individuals, young and old, coming from another country, family dysfunction, trying to escape. But again, this kind of story being told, it's not the kind of story that should be told out there, because it doesn't help. It's not good. It's not good. Not a good story at all to tell. Besides the sexualization, which that is what's getting the attention. And of course, any journalism or any media out there right now, they're going to go after the salaciousness. So of course they're going to show the clips of these young 11-year-old, I don't know how much younger they might be, but again, 11-year-old girls twerking. Basically doing more than what you would see out of a dance team in college. More than you would see from a cheerleading squad. It's to the point, because some of the moves, I kid you not, it looks like something out of the WAP video. Some of them are doing the same kind of moves. It is, because they're going to the floor on all fours, humping the floor. That's exactly what was in the WAP video with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. Well, guess what? Those are grown women. And if they want to be sexualized in that way, there was outcry for that too. But again, just to see that, no. Let me get into the story from Variety and talk about this backlash that's going on. So, hashtag cancel Netflix was going on. A lot of people have been saying that. Again, I know about this story and the fact of people trying to cancel a service. Some people might be saying that. And it might be the end thing to do to pile on. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people are not canceling Netflix just over this. Again, it's just like everything else. You just don't watch it. The only thing I would be talking about with this is that I don't know what the rating for this, if there's a rating for this movie. If it's been given, what is the movie rating for this? I don't even know what that is. Actually, that's a good question. It has been given a certificate of TVMA. And there have been people that actually have praised this film. So everything started off going back a while ago. There was a promotional poster and a trailer that were criticized on social media for allegedly sexualizing 11-year-old girls and were different from those promoting the film in its original release in France. That's the point. Look at that point. So in France, they didn't even show what was going on in the release. And then what happened in France, the Parents Television Council and several petitions requested Netflix to remove the film entirely. The letter garnered thousands of signatures. So Netflix then replaced the controversial poster with one stating, "This is not an accurate representation of the film, so the image and description has not been updated." Then there was another story that said that Tessa Thompson, the actress that's from a number of different movies. So Tessa Thompson, Jesus, I cannot say her name. Really great actress. You might remember her from Men in Black International, Thor Ragnarok, the Creed movies, Westworld, among other things. And also the movie from last year. What was the one that I saw? Sorry to Bother You. Oh my God, that Lakeith Stanfield movie. That was one of the most... that movie in 2018 was really a movie I just... I still can't get have my head around how that thing finished up. But that was a really crazy movie. Well, about a month or so back, he took to Twitter to defend the upcoming release. She said on Twitter on August 20th, Cuties, it's still on here, by the way, it's not been deleted. Cuties is a beautiful film. It gutted me at Sundance Festival. The Sundance Film Festival. It introduces a fresh voice at the helm. She's a French Senegalese black woman mining her experiences. The film comments on the hypersexualization of pre-adolescent girls. Disappointed to see the current discourse. And it got a lot of blowback as a result. And there's a lot of feedback about it. And by the way, one of the thoughts that was also made about was the fact that one of the co-founders of the Sundance Film Festival not too long ago was sentenced to 6 years to life in prison after pleading guilty to sexually abusing a child. Okay, I don't want to get into the whole story about pedophilia, but this truly is a very... It's a pretty subliminal form of pedophilia, Cuties. It just is. Can't even really go past around that. Can't really go around that. It just is. Now, into the story itself. Cutie September 9th was the premiere for it, so it just came out on Netflix. Hashtag cancel Netflix was the number one trending topic on Twitter as I record the show tonight. So again, Cuties is about a young Senegalese girl in Paris who joins a free-spirited dance clique to escape family dysfunction. And Netflix at one point did not respond to comment. There was a petition on change.org calling on Netflix customers to cancel their subscriptions. And there was a petition that had nearly 600,000 signees. Wow. Now, Cuties was produced or directed by the French filmmaker Maïmouna Doucouré, which premiered at the 2019 Sundance Film Festival. It won the World Cinematic Dramatic Directing Award. It's based on a short film called Mamans, which is about an 8-year-old child furious when her polygamous dad invites his new bride into the Parisian apartment. That movie won at Sundance the Short Film International Fiction Jury Award. So a lot of conservative groups have commented about this, but again, it's not about conservative or liberal or not. I just think there's a lot of people that just they feel somewhat. What's the best word to look for? They feel freaked out, creeped out by what's going on here. The description on Netflix. It reads, quote, 11-year-old Amy starts to rebel against her conservative family's traditions when she becomes fascinated with a free-spirited dance crew. Previously, the description read, Amy, 11, becomes fascinated with a twerking dance crew. Hoping to join them, she starts to explore her femininity, defying her family's traditions. So that was a description that was being changed, all the issues that came from that. Netflix acquired worldwide rights excluding France, to Cuties prior to its Sundance premiere. In Variety's view of the film, Amy Nicholson writes that Doucour's coming-of-age drama starts with Amy doodling stick figures and climaxes with a kid booty-shaking in hot pants. The choice is also false, but Doucour believes that today's girls see their options in black and white. Cuties' job is to coil the contrasting messages and spin them until their lead falls down dizzy, which can make the film feel as subtle as a headache. So, it's not towards the end that we actually, I guess, according to this review, that the worst is seen at the end. We never needed to see this. I mean, American film doesn't need to go to this level. And this is just a testament to say that we need to do more to get out and have really creative movies. Now, listen, I know I talk about we should get stories that are coming out from other areas. Okay, so this is a movie that came from France, from a French filmmaker. And they just, Netflix will just take certain foreign films, and if they can bring it on, they think they can do something with it, they'll do it. But again, we don't need these kind of movies. We want good stories. Now, if the story was something else, if the girl was not booty shaking in hot pants, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. If we didn't have the end result of young girls together in this movie, and along with other young girls together, story would have been great if she was doing anything else. I mean, just about anything else. But just can't do it. It's just not any good. It's just not. So with that said, here we are. That movie it was never need to be made. And I'm not going to spend any more time on it. I'm done. It sucks. It sucks that we even have to have this story, but you know what? I know people are going to talk about it. And on behalf of content creators out there, the movie needs to be condemned. And it needs to be set as an example of what not to do in the movie industry or television. Because you could do something because the most important thing is, okay, you want to have the child understand that maybe she came from a conservative family. She wants to go ahead and, open her mind out of the things. Well, that's education. That's not her running away and joining a dance troupe, twerking. The end result is what the biggest problem with this movie is. The idea of the movie, in terms of a young girl coming of age, we need more stories of coming of age. Sure. But we don't need this. Coming of age stories are very important, but this is the wrong message to send. Also the wrong optics altogether. We're going to leave it there on that. Let's go and move along. And let's go and move along into other things, because we're going to talk about movies and the standards they're going to have. Because some of the things that happen here, which is why Tessa Thompson said what she said, is that there are certain things that kind of check the boxes for a movie to be considered, a film favorite, a movie that could be nominated for particular awards. Because here's the thing. If the Sundance Film Festival decided to go ahead and put on this right here, okay, who's to say that this movie cannot be nominated for a number of things? And then you got to ask yourself, who are the people that are nominating? Because, really, if we come up in January, could we see some of people from the members of the Hollywood Foreign Press nominate this movie? Could we see that? Could we honestly see this movie being nominated for SAG Awards or Oscars or what have you? Well, there are certain things that check the boxes here. The one thing that is the feeling of pedophilia in this is just really, really frightening. But in the world of Hollywood and what they consider would be acceptable, well, if Netflix found this acceptable to go ahead and put on their platform, then what other things could Hollywood accept or not accept? Because obviously they're changing the rules of what's going on. Because of the issues when it comes to being performance allies, as Hollywood wants to be right now, they are changing the rules of the Oscars. As we already know, the the Grammys already want to get rid of the urban contemporary category. And they're going to change things up. The Oscars now want to make a different change of their own. Because the Oscars now want to create Best Picture contenders that must at least have some forms of inclusion. A very interesting plan, but let's see what they talk about. We're going to try to go into some context, because I don't want to just leave that out there and see what's going on. Because again, LA Times reports new Oscar standards say Best Picture contenders must be inclusive to compete. Okay. This is a step by the Motion Picture Academy of Motion Pictures, to boost diversity both within its ranks and across the film industry. So on Tuesday, the Film Academy announced new representation standards for films to be eligible to compete for Best Picture. It's as part of the organization's Academy Aperture 2025 initiative, encompassing both representation on screen in the types of stories being told and the actors involved, as well as behind the scenes in the makeup of the crew and the inclusivity of the companies involved. Now, again, it's fine. But again, it should be performance-based, merit-based. And for me, just to go and see that the movies that are being presented out here are inclusive, well, who gives a shit about that? I'm sorry. We don't need to go ahead and put parameters on here to make movies fit and check out a couple of boxes. No, this is not the way you create inclusion. Okay, Oscars? What needs to be done is inclusion needs to be done within Hollywood. The glass ceiling needs to be broken for those who are qualified and who have the performance and have the pedigree of great work to make them to where there's certain people that do get to go and become arbiters of Hollywood. Okay? That's what needs to happen. The boardrooms, the people that are producing films, the moguls, the studios, they need to have people in management in an inclusive environment. And when they do, they should be people of a certain stature that have earned that job, not because they check a couple of boxes. It has to be absolutely performance-based. So now, to be eligible for Best Picture, a film must at least meet two standards across 4 categories: on-screen representation, themes and narratives, creative leadership, and project team, industry access and opportunities, and audience development. Within each category are a variety of criteria involving the inclusion of people in underrepresented groups, including women, people of color, LGBTQ people, and those with cognitive or physical disabilities. Okay. Now, can I ask, we have a lot of movies right now that the Oscar community already embraces in the same vein. Am I correct? Now, the Academy Awards last year, the 92nd Awards in 2019, your Best Picture nominees, you had Parasite, 1917, Ford versus Ferrari, Joker, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Let me just show you what the actual Best Picture nominees were. Okay, so Parasite, The Irishman, Ford versus Ferrari, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Got it. Okay. So they don't like the fact that the movies that they had in 2020 they didn't really accept. Okay. So they might have not liked the fact that there was not a lot of diversity probably within the studio makers, nor was there any when it came to who was being nominated, I guess. Who were the actors? What was the audience being which audience was it being directed at? Now, let's see, this is the 91st Academy Awards. This is 2018. Your Best Picture nominees, which I think was a little more diverse. Okay, we had Green Book, which won, Black Panther, Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Roma, A Star Is Born, and Vice. So again, same thing goes across again. Okay. Year before that, Shape of Water, Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Well, the thing is, if you're doing this will significantly change the makeup of the awards. Why? For whatever reason, I don't know. But the thing is this. Do I mind the fact that we have some movies that might get some different stories? No. Actually, I like the fact that we might get some stories that might, if we get diversity and get diverse topics, and we're not being put with a narrative, it's a good told story, I don't give a shit. That's fine. Standards will not go into effect until the 96th Oscar Awards in 2024, but at a time for racial reckoning for both Hollywood and the nation as a whole. The Academy believes the requirements provide a roadmap for how the industry can ensure at least films that can compete for its highest honor reflect the diversity of the movie-going audience of the wider world. Well, here's the question I'm going to ask then. Are we going to really care that Oscar movies don't make any money? Because it's the same thing where you see certain foreign films or other movies that come out. When they come out for your consideration, and then you see Oscar movies being brought out to the forefront, are people going to go and watch certain movies, or are they going to prefer to go in and watch, the next Marvel movie, the next Star Wars movie, okay? Are they going to do that? Or the next remake of something else? Are they going to do that? What happens next year when Top Gun comes out? Are people going to go and watch Top Gun Maverick? Or are they going to go and watch one of these Oscar-nominated movies? Because, there's a need to be diverse. If it's a good story, it gets good reviews, and people like watching it, I see a good number on Rotten Tomatoes for the audience, then I'll go see it. But again, I've never been held back myself on what movies I go watch. Again, I want to watch a movie that a lot of people are going to like. It's got good appeal. It's got a great story. I'm going to go see it. I really, again, I understand there's a whole thought process of there's got to be certain things that, to improve the industry, but that's what you do within. You don't do it to the movies themselves. What you do is you change the people that are making the movies at the top. You get fresh blood in there. And if that means certain people that are providing a sense of diversity, equity, and inclusion, then please, by all means, get them on board. Because if I were running a movie studio, I don't want the same kind of people doing the same kind of movies. No, it doesn't work anymore. Now, we need new people with new ideas. So let them come out. That's what we want. That's what we should all want. Among the new standards, those concerning on-screen representation are likely to garner the more scrutiny. Indeed, some recent Best Picture nominees that featured exclusively white and male casts, including 1917 and The Irishman, might have had difficulty meeting the new on-screen standards. Those standards require one of the following. At least one of the lead actors or significant supporting actors is from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group, or at least 30% of all actors in secondary or more minor roles are from certain underrepresented groups, or the main storyline, theme, or narrative is centered on an underrepresented group. But sometimes, you know how many times you see period pieces? Well, think about that. I mean, do you really feel like there's anything that's coming up from there that, you know, do you see anything that says that the period pieces you want to do for films are not going to be able to be seen, right? Because of the fact that if we want to go and talk about something that's from medieval days or some earlier time, are we going to have creative license to start changing the characters because it doesn't fit the parameters to become Oscar nominated? I think what happens is more movies will not care about Oscar nominations, because I think what will happen is that by putting more parameters on a movie, forcing it to follow new on-screen standards, I think more movies are just going to be done for the money, a pure money grab, than it is for any awards, any kind of recognition. I think the recognition is going to be diminished extensively because of this. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. I think that's what's going to happen. I think Hollywood movies want to make money. And there's only a certain amount of movies that can be independent or can be critically acclaimed. But again, a lot of those movies are independents. Now, if you open the room for those kind of movies to come forward, I mean, that's what might happen. The independent movie makers, and this is where I look on the other side, devil's advocate. For independent movie makers, if they're able to go and make movies that are under these on-screen standards, then why not? But by the way, why does it have to be the best picture? Why don't we make a category for that movie that represents the best in diversity, equity, and inclusion, if you're going to do that? But they decided, no, we're not going to just create a specialty award. We're going to make the best picture it. That's pretty, it's a very bold move. Very bold move. For the 2022 and 2023 Oscars, potential Best Picture nominees will be required to submit a confidential Academy Inclusion Standards form, but will not be held to particular inclusion thresholds. So they're already going to have to get into the process. And what's going to happen too is that if people still think the Oscars matter, then you're going to obviously see that these movie studios are going to try to do things because they feel like there's still a need for certain movies to go ahead and be brought in, right? And that's what they're thinking of. Oh, well. To move along into the two of the four standards that need to be eligible in 2024, the 96th Academy Awards in several years. Again, there's Standard A, on-screen representation, themes, and narratives. You must have lead or significant supporting actors that are at least Asian, Hispanic, or Latinx, Black or African American, Indigenous, Latin, Native American, Alaskan Native, Middle Eastern, North African, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander, other underrepresented race or ethnicity. Now, what we might also do, being devil's advocate, is that we might get to see more people being casted for roles. But again, that's going to be only a limited amount. What you want, again, it's not so much that the talent needs to be a different makeup, because it is. What we should see is more work up the top. But again, this is a placation, a capitulation to what the real problem is. It's not within the movies themselves. It's all the way to the top. It's the people that are making the movies. That's where it is. The talent agents, the movie studio owners, the corporations. That's where the change needs to be. But of course, as always, corporations do this, major studios do this, organizations do this to do so, such as. And that's why that's what they think they do. Oh, well. And I put some more links on how you can learn more about what they're saying. The rules are explained. I got a Variety.com article talks about that. We'll bring that up a little bit later on. So you want to go take a look for that for yourself. You can go read that. All the links of everything I talk about is on broadcasterspodcast.com. Go look for it. Or also go and put it on my Twitter page and on Facebook. All the links are at broadcasterspodcast.com. Time to go into my relevant radio roundup. SiriusXM, Howard Stern's contract talks are dragging on, but the CEO, Jim Meyer, is optimistic about striking a new deal, which his contract expires at the year end. And it's a focus for Wall Street because they're wondering what's going to happen when they look at if SiriusXM is going to still be a player. Because if Howard Stern decides to go somewhere else, where will he go? And most recently, SiriusXM, which already owns Pandora and acquired Stitcher, hit a positive note because now their self-pay subscriber net additions are about $700,000, up from $500,000 previously anticipated, and their shares are up. So they're a good point. But if they lose Howard, it's going to hurt them in the long run. That's what's going on there. I want to go into podcasting next, a couple of things. I did an episode of When I'm Not Podcasting talking about Joe Rogan. I want to just bring this up really quickly. The fact from Billboard magazine, Joe Rogan coming on, having certain programming that came out during his launch did not get added, and that caused a major drop of his deal. So the thing is that, even though Joe Rogan has signed a $100 million deal back in May, giving Spotify worldwide exclusive but not ownership of his popular podcast, they already got a little bit of blowback because of the fact that not all his episodes were released. And I think part of the other thing, too, was that they didn't have video right away up, but now they do, of his program. But then again, you can also find the show over on YouTube. So again, with what YouTube is doing, well, at least what Joe Rogan's doing, he's got things set up so they can get everything ready to go for when his podcast is already up and running. It's already up and running, and now it's doing good. But it didn't look good for Spotify to just not release all his previous episodes like that. Was a bit of a mark, and it hurt them in the long run on the shares part in their public offering. So anybody else doing podcasting needs to think about this story again, about what comes up with that. Which brings me to, even though there were investors that were bearish on Spotify because of what happened with Joe Rogan, iHeartMedia CEO Bob Pittman is bullish on podcasts industry growth. And he calls it, quote, it's sort of the on-demand version of radio, but unlike the TV people, we don't intend to give our power to create this product to someone else. So he talked to an investor conference that podcast advertising trends have remained strong during the pandemic and described podcasting as a Netflix for radio. He spoke at the Bank of America Securities 2020 Media Communications and Entertainment Conference. And he said, quote, podcasting is already bigger than streaming services like Spotify, and the growth continues. So we are heavily investing into it. Well, he's doing that because he has nothing else. Because obviously nothing's going on with the terrestrial side. He'd rather just go ahead and move along with what he's doing here. Now, iHeart doesn't plan, he says, to leave the business opportunity to a disruptor like the entertainment industry did when was in streaming when Netflix came along. We see it as an extension, quote, of radio. Unlike the TV people, we don't want to intend to give our power. That's what he said. So he also said that the host was very important for podcasts, driving their success or lack thereof. And addressing the outlook for podcasting as a business, he said, quote, I feel like this is another one of those that is going to surprise on the upside. But the thing is, Bob, is that you continue to go ahead and push into podcasting, and you think entertainment drives podcasting in order to get advertising. But we already know what you've already done before when it comes to radio. You've eliminated much talent. You have consolidated advertising to a national scale through ad representation. And now you're at the point where A lot of stations are hurting right now. And there's no real answer to what's going on right now with what is happening with radio. Okay, there just isn't. No plan's been made. I mean, to just go ahead and just not even look at radio right now and try to help build that back up and make it better. He just neglects and goes to podcasting. And for what? What good does that do? Well, he feels like there's just a need to go ahead and let's just find another place for revenue. We're just going to stick to our iHeartRadio platform, and we're going to buy other shows. We're not going to create our own shows. If we're going to create some, we're going to find somebody else to create it for us. As we talked about a few weeks ago with that awards contest, which whatever company it is right out, there's a company out there that is looking to go ahead and bring on new podcasters, of which one of them will be awarded to be exclusively on iHeartRadio. I guess hosted on iHeartRadio. That doesn't make a difference. And that's what I don't get. It's just really, it's stupid. And again, to hear Bob Pittman continue to talk about podcasting, you know, he has his little one-liners, you know. Podcasting is radio's birthright. Again, he's wrong. And again, it's the same thing over and over. Neglecting radio. And one of the people that continues to talk about radio in some way, shape, or form, who has an attachment to Sirius XM and to terrestrial radio, is Lee Abrams, because he's talked about it. And he actually got featured by Variety.com in a story saying that terrestrial radio is on the clock. Bob Pittman, are you hearing? Are you listening? So the story from Roy Trakin, he says that, well, Lee Abrams says that information is a new rock and roll. With the new consultancy, Abrams is promoting a reimagination of radio that he maintains should incorporate more news, video content, and music innovation. So here's what he thinks is the idea. If you didn't know, Lee Abrams is a 67-year-old pioneer, member of the Rock Radio Hall of Fame, started the album-oriented rock format. He was a DJ and a program director at WRIF in Detroit before installing a similar stream rotation dubbed Superstars at station QDR, in Raleigh, North Carolina. He says, quote, "That was a style of radio that was right for the times. It was extremely successful and brought economic gains to FM radio. Basically taking some of the idea of progressive rock radio or freeform radio of the 70s and into the 80s, he corporatized it, basically. And it was a good working form. Not for everybody, but for a mainstream audience, it worked and it was successful." He's absolutely right. Today, he says, quote, "Radio has become too corporate, too consolidated, too boring." Amen. But that was a different era with a different competitive opportunity, which we took advantage of. We valued personalities, though. We gave Howard Stern, Steve Dahl, and the late Sonny Fox some of their first on-air gigs. And in March, just before the pandemic hit, Abrams launched Media Visions, which promotes a new reimagination of radio, incorporating news and information, video content, and music innovation. As part of the launch, he is touting a reimagining of TV news with News Movie, Radio Free Earth, a 24/7 streaming service aimed at the 40 and over crowd, and a documentary charting the history of music and radio in the 20th century, Sonic Messengers, When Music and Radio Changed the World. Now, he says that, quote, "terrestrial radio represents an even smaller piece of a pie, which now includes satellite streaming online. It's considered a utility, like the cable or power company, rather than a creative entity that inspires fans." He says radio needs a complete overhaul, quote, "blowing up the 80s focus group mentality and starting to reinvent themselves." Amen. He wants stations to go back to supporting new music and emerging artists, not just the familiar oldies. And I totally agree. He says that artists don't bring their acoustic guitars to stations to perform. Even the branding is complete bull, and the people know it. We need to return to the day when radio stations talked street, not research. No more audience metric testing. We get the record companies to go ahead and bring the records to the studios, get new records on, go to the clubs, get new music out there. Let local talent come on. Let these stations not become homogenized. Let them have their own individual style, sound, and format. He also said that, quote, all the great radio stations in history relaunched with an incredible depth of thinking, looking at every aspect, production, audio, and print logos, the music mix, training the jocks. These days, stations simply test the music library and maybe put up a few billboards. Now, another thing he says is very interesting is, so more than 9 out of 10 people listen to the radio, but they're not really fans. So why not make these stations amazing? It's not that hard. I just think nobody's really tried. Now, he also makes a mention of that the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which you got to remember, when Quentin Tarantino put that movie together, he took and recreated the sound of 93 KHJ, one of the most legendary AM radio stations in Los Angeles, one of the most popular, Boss Radio, Top 40 Radio, Los Angeles, Robert W. Morgan, Humble Harv, The Real Don Steele, those types. That's your lineup right there. Great music, great sounds. And it just worked. Abrams enthuses that KHJ was a great station with a mission, and it created it beautifully, and overnight became the soundtrack of Hollywood. I haven't heard a station like that in a while. Radio hasn't changed with the times. Innovation and content are essential for its survival. He's absolutely right. Because when I try to think about it, what's the last station that launched on the air that really shook me and said, man, what a great radio station? Can you think of one? Because honestly, I think back, it's got to be since the 80s since I heard a station that really took off and changed the dynamic for me. And that was WFLZ in Tampa Bay, the Power Pig. Again, when you have certain stories, again, and that was a top 40 radio station, but man, not even close. They leaned almost crossover. They leaned with freestyle. They leaned with rap. They leaned with R&B. A different style format. It was hot. It was fresh. It was upbeat and very audience driven. It was just wonderful. And I just think people don't realize how good that was and how well they did things like that. It just really was just solid to go and listen to and enjoy. But we don't hear stations like that now for whatever reason. I don't know. So I'm going to leave it there. That's going to be doing for tonight. We'll leave it there for another Broadcasters podcast, and I hope all of you enjoyed. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe, share, and please review the show. So remember, subscribe and share to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/JBRASCO951. Finally got the 50 subscribers. Yes! Hopefully more people will go and catch the show like this. And if you're catching this for the first time, I hope you'll go ahead and share the video or share the podcast and send it along to other people so they can find out about it. Bring this audience together. And also, if there's things you want to hear about here on the program, by all means, reach out to me, kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com. Again, King of Podcasts. Look for me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. It's all there. And I hope you consider that. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and drop it here. Come back for another Broadcasters podcast. And please remember, the content...
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast, presented by BroadcastersPodcast.com and KingofPodcasts.com. The Broadcasters Podcast is brought to you by KingofPodcasts.com/Amazon. If Amazon is good enough for the King of Podcasts, it most certainly is good for you. KingofPodcasts.com/Amazon. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program. The Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at KingofPodcasts.com.